Namaste everyone. Hitesh Kakkar. I represent Geetam University and the new initiative of Geetam, which is Kautilya School of Public Policy. I'm taking care of the admissions and marketing part and supporting the new initiatives, very well supported by my colleague Priyanka, who is sitting there.
Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. This is Vibhav Reddy from Sridatta Group of Institutions situated in Ibrahimpatnam, Hyderabad. I am the Vice Chairman for the institutions. I represent the management of Sridatta Institutions. That's all about me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Professor Shiv Shankar from SRM University AP. So this is the new university from the SRM group. We are located in Hyderabad, in the Vijayawada Amravati region. So we have three schools: the management school, the liberal arts school, and the engineering and sciences school. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon or evening, everyone. My name is Neti Srinivasan. I work in the strategic advisory sector for education. I work as an independent consultant. At this point of time, I'm engaged very strongly with the Meru International Schools. So that's higher ed, and I'm K-12. So before that, I've have deep experience in the K-12 sector. I've seen it evolve from where it was in the traditional format to where it is now in terms of the digital format. So I worked for the Ryan International Group of Schools before this. I was there for about 12 years, and I was the Chief Operations Officer out there. And of course, before that, I have about 20 years of experience in the technology, in the education, and in sales, etc. So yeah, that's a little bit
Great,
about
thank
me.
you everybody. Because you mentioned about you have looked at this transition really well and closely, so I'll start my question with you, sir. And the question is that how have you seen the enrollment trends and the use of data, student inquiries changing over the years, and what has been your experience dealing with that?
Yes, Suraj, first, very interesting question, and I could go on and on about it, but let me sort of limit myself to a few minutes. And I'll speak from the perspective of K-12 because that's what I'm familiar with. Uh, Put yourself back about 30 years or even 35 years, the biggest worry of a parent, a father was, मैं बच्चे को कौन से स्कूल में डालूं? That would eat him up sort of day in and day out, and they would reach out to all the people who had, what was called pull, and try and get their kid into some sort of school, some good school, right? So many decisions of schooling, of housing, of where to take your house, etc., were built around where the kid is going to school. A lot of that probably still happens, but we've moved a lot from there. Now, in the traditional system, what would happen? If an inquiry walked into the school, you'd have a register, put down his name, etc., and then move on. We've of course heard of horror stories of parents waiting overnight, literally overnight camping outside some schools to get the limited set of forms that were available. And of course, I have a little bit of gray hair, so you know that I come from a slightly different generation, and I've seen all of this. And some of the schools that I have worked with have also used these traditional forms of, quote unquote, data collection. Parent comes in, take the name, take the, in those days, phone numbers, etc. were not there, address, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the data was, in fact, lost. Simply because, I have 100 seats to give out. I have 1,500 or 2,000 applications coming in. I figure out what I want to do. So the entire demand supply was extremely in favor of schools. Cut to now. Okay. Now, if you see, and definitely in the metros and the tier 1 cities, the whole equation has tilted in favor of parents very, very clearly. And that has meant that a lot of schools have had to change. Now, there is, of course, the demand supply that is causing them to change. Second is, by and large, the invasion of technology into our everyday lives is evident to all. I mean, I'll take a bet everybody out here has a mobile phone, right? Some of you, probably 2 of them. And, just to give you an interesting statistics, 1995, when India introduced mobile phones, the phone penetration was 1%, which means out of 100 people, only 1% had a phone connection. Now it's upwards of 90%. I mean, I think it's 93 or 94%. So the fact of the matter is internet has spread, connectivity has spread, mobile phones have spread, and therefore technology is now visible everywhere for everything. And therefore schools have also had to change. Now, but you see this whole transformation from a school deciding what they want to do to actually now becoming customer centric, as it were. I think that's a difficult transformation, but that mindset had to come in. So now what happens? I mean, to really now answer your question, now you see everything has moved to a digital format. So we need a system of software where we can capture all the inquiries and even pre-inquiries, then nurture them, reach out to them, and therefore, and close the admission, and even beyond that, right up to the alumni stage through the life cycle of a student. And now what we are of course seeing is that this spread of technology has helped immensely. Okay. Uh, we know that earlier on, if I were to look at a statistic, at least 30 to 40% inquiries were lost through the system because there was no way of figuring out who came in and who said what. Now everything is logged in. So I know what's happening. And because of the analytic ability of the software that's available, I can figure out who came in, when they came in, what's happening, analyze it, and therefore fine tune my entire strategy accordingly, almost on a day to day or definitely on a week to week basis. So I think that's been a big shift. That has meant training, that has meant the system had to change, that has meant transparency throughout the entire, vertical. And I think, benefits both the parent as well as the school. I think that's my two bit. Thank you.
Great, very interesting. Points you mentioned about transitioning. From 1995 till today,
Yeah.
and the penetration of mobility is also there. Penetration of internet also is pretty deep in the country. I think 900 million people out of 1.4 billion in the country has an access to internet, which surpasses the occupational structure and the distribution of who lives where as well, because 60-65% of population in India is still rural. That means that they also have a deeper access to internet, which is fantastic. You also mentioned about the demand and supply and how it has changed over the period. That gives me
Very
a cue.
much, yeah.
Yeah, that gives me a cue for the next question. And Hitesh, I would like you to answer that question. Now, earlier, I think there was no marketing in educational institutions because there is a lot of pull effect because of, I think, limited access to the education. Because in our times when you wanted to do engineering, there were just a handful of institutions. I knew only 4 colleges, but now wherever I look, there are 4 colleges. So the market has become extremely competitive. Now, how do you ensure that these are the sources through which I am able to do a right set of outreach for my institution, right? And what has been the most effective sources so far, both offline, online, is something that we would like you to shed some light on.
Yeah, I believe both offline and online, both are really very important, right? And it's completely depending upon how you are going to nurture your campaigns accordingly. When you consider an offline campaign which is running across the India or the selected geographies, right? What your audiences are, right? You have to nurture them. You have to foster them. That is something which is really very important when we consider that. And same offline see, every river has to come into an ocean someday. So every offline campaign has to come on online. So that's where the CRM plays a role. Right? When CRM comes into a picture, we cannot live without RBC. Right? So that's really very important for a bloodstream. In the similar way, when you look forward for any CRM, the nurturing has to happen, right? That is something which is where the T plus campaigns, I am completely game into that. The T plus something is which brings so much of juice into your leads and nurturing and all those things. Now, organic, yes. There is something which is at par, above all, in fact. Right? But yes, when you look forward, some of the referrals campaigns and the digital campaigns which are running in, right, with your lookalike part and all retargeting, that is something which is going to help us completely. Now, further, how you leverage on that data, how you customize that, right, how you plug and play that, that is really very important.
All right. So, see, the question I wanted to understand, or the answer that I wanted to get from you was that what is the kind of marketing mix that you are, you are having currently at Geetam University, and what has been your experience so far? Maybe both yourself and Vibhav may give an extended, answer to the question as well. Uh, Alongside, also tell me, and both of you can help us with that answer, is that how have you been able to measure the outcome and efficacy of these campaigns, right? Because I think digital in India, we're talking about online marketing, transitioning from offline to online, but digital India, came with a lot of promises, right? One of the promise was that it has a longer shelf life, right? It is cost effective. You can do a lot of tuning at any kind of time, unlike a traditional medium where if you have put up a hoarding and it is going to stay there for 30 days. You do not know, right, what is happening, not happening. But it was very unlike or it was on the contrary as far as digital is concerned, right? You can make changes on a daily basis, hourly basis, based on the outcome. Do you think that digital has been able to live to its promises that we just spoke about? And what has been the marketing mix which has worked really well for you? You can name some publishers, maybe, right? Don't worry about it. We're not promoting anybody, but still, if you want to share some feedback, yeah.
I may partially be able to answer that question, not fully, but I am better suited to represent colleges from Tier 2 or Tier 3 institutions. I represent a Tier 2 who's recently coming up to become a Tier 1 institution. So the transition phase from 3 to 1, we've seen a lot of difference. In the initial days, like Sir has already mentioned, we used to collect data traditionally. So we used to target audience. See, it depends on the parameters that the institution is trying to take into to market their own institution in the market. So what they usually do is, previously, we used to go to templates to institutions. We used to send a faculty there to teach few subjects, try to take in data from there. We used to send our admissions team to set entrances or conduct mock examinations from our end. So this was the traditional way of pulling in data. And we used to store the data, segregate it, and then start making our own preparations on how to approach those particular students or the consumer. But after through the evolution that I've seen, the segregation part of data that we have collected has become more simplified. See, for example, there are products. I define a set of parameters in those products and collect data according to those parameters and target only those audience. But when the data is huge, manually it was very difficult for our people to sit down, segregate, and then redistribute. This has been simplified by IT. So when you say, for example, I am targeting people from rural areas or areas next to Tier 2 towns, or so when I put in that parameter and try to pull data, it is we get that data very easily, and we approach those students or those parents. So that is how we used to do it. But now we are relying on both traditional and also on products like Merito or others like College Deco, College Dunia. So everybody's got a different concept, but a complete solution does not exist. There is always a human intervention that is always required somewhere. For example, I pull some data in, and that data is, for example, segregated and already distributed. And then there is human intervention. What a person like me would want is to finish that lead completely, get the hot lead, where the last step, one of my admissions in charge just calls and talks to the person, the faculty, or sorry, the teacher, or the parent or the student, and then try to attract them. So that is the kind of solution I usually look at. So I think I partially was able to answer your question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think I'll move to Professor Shankar. Taking a cue from what you mentioned. However, I think see, as far as the human intervention is concerned, it is still going to be there until unless AI takes the world, which I feel would happen someday. Um, I don't know if you're using Merido yet or not, right? If you have started using Merido, you'll find that there are a lot of very early indicators in the system which were built to do what you are expecting, right? you would get plethora of leads, a lot of leads from your outreach, from the publishers, from different campaigns, but not all of them would convert, and not all of them would be of very high intent, because students would just browse and drop in an inquiry, or there could be some data push activity, etc. So the challenge becomes that, do I build a capacity to call all of those leads and increase my acquisition cost, or do I filter those leads and call and try to convert some specific leads, which keeps my cost down and keeps the motivation of my counselors high? That's some indicators which we have, which should really help you. If you've got an MEI, you've got a primary, secondary, tertiary lead concept, you've got a lead verification concept, and there are very smart views, and there are a lot of automations in play which could help you to do that. I'm sure the customer success person would assist you with the same. Right now, coming back to you, sir, Vibhav mentioned that the absorption of data in their system, in their institution, was a lot more manual, but they are utilizing something to make that automated. How has been the absorption of data collected through different marketing channels in your institution? How has that changed over the period of time, right? And how is that benefiting you is what we like to hear from you.
So before I answer your question, let me just spend some time on the data itself.
Sort of close.
Oh, okay, so so the data acquisition itself, let me spend some time. So I think for data acquisition, if we look at it, I would say pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think during the COVID, we have seen that even the students, parents, they have evolved, they have become more digitally literate, right? And their aspirations also have changed, right? So, so pre-COVID, we have to take the initiative to educate the parents or educate the students. Now, what is happening because of the amount of information available to them, so they are more educated when they talk to us. So that's the first difference we are seeing in the market, right? And if we have, and most of them are digitally literate, so even to grab their attention, it is a challenge for us because, as you said, there's a lot of competition uh, from all the peer universities. So grab their attention and retain that attention so that we would be able to convert that into enrollment has actually become a challenge. So what we are doing at SRM AP is the whole journey. We have divided into 4 stages. We call that AIDA process. So A is attention. So grab the attention of the students either through offline means, online means. When we say offline means, through education fairs, through school outreach, right? So grab their attention. So that is one set of data we get. So once we get the data, right? So we have to kindle the interest in them for the students and make our SRM AP known to the students. So here we'll be using our digital, and this is where the second filtering happens. So just to create the interest among the students, we would be talking about our infrastructure, talking about our faculty, talking about our the student achievements, etc. So from there we go to the decision making part, right? So this is where the second set of filtering happens. So in decision making, we talk to the students about the scholarships available, why they should choose SRM when they have so many options available to them, both locally and reputed institute, right? So that's the, and finally the action. So that's where we convert or whatever lead into admission, right? So that's where we again talk about the placement, the entrepreneur, our USPs. So this is the complete flow of what we actually follow. And if you say, do we have the tools to do all this? No, because the market itself is dynamic. We cannot say that from Jan to Feb, all students would be in decision making phase. So everything would be overlapping with each other. So this is where if we have a strong CRM, which would help us track the individual growth, and again, not just pump information to the students, because there is so much information is available to them. So we should be able to personalize the information that we give to the students so that they keep continuing with us, right? So this is one more challenge, like if a CRM can address, that would be really helpful. So now coming to data and how do we integrate? So that is again a pain point because data comes from multiple sources, both external and internal. And collating all that data, segregating, seeing what is useful, what is not useful, which we should follow, right? So that is a process which is still evolving. Uh, but I think what we have done at SRM EP is for each and every activity we have a SPOC, right? So, and the Spocks keep talking about among themselves and see that the data leakage is minimized, and at the same time we'll be able to convert the lead to application. But that is a pain point which is there, and hopefully the CRM would be able to address that.
Fantastic. I think very interesting some of the points you mentioned, sir, and maybe you can continue answering another question, which is from the question, answer that you've given me, and maybe Niti sir, if you can also join in to answer the question. You mentioned about the students are already a lot informed, right? Because there's a lot of content discovery right across, and they would like to read more, view more videos before they make a decision, right? So how do you ensure that, or how do you inform the already informed, right? And also, what would you advise that there are some certain basics which the institutions around you or that you are aware of, they lack, and they should really correct it so that the information dissemination pre-discovery or during discovery is already there. So I think if you can just help us and the entire audience understand, maybe any of you two, or maybe the both of you.
All right. For us, it's more than the student, it's the parent, clearly. But before that, I just want to reflect of something which you mentioned that, there is digital plus human, right? Many years ago, when I was talking to one of the school promoters at an event like this, and I asked him, "आप लोग digital marketing करते हो क्या?" And he said, "हाँ करते हैं, पर कुछ हो नहीं रहा." So after multiple questions, I discovered that they had run a Facebook campaign, given an email ID for the response, and after that they forgot about it, and they even forgot the password of the email ID, so nobody was even looking at it. But such funky stuff continues to happen in the whole sector. But I think that sort of is, indicative of where we were in a manner of speaking, and where we have come to now. So, to the question of information overload and what you were talking about is that, everybody tells you that if you're giving a video, if I don't have a hook within the first 2-3 seconds, then I'm probably going to switch off the video. Okay. So it's important for us to fine tune our entire campaign that we have. And now that, it was very well said that there's so much bombardment of data and ads and everything from all across, that it's critical that we send information that is kind of relevant to the parents. Now, big question of how do we find out what's relevant, right? One of the aspects that helped us was that once the admissions were completed in a particular year, we had a focus group discussion with 3 or 4 focus group discussions with 3 to 4 groups, 20 each. So about 80 to 90 odd data points that we got from individuals, which helped us understand the entire admission process, as it were, and what is the information that they would have wanted at various points of time. And therefore, we were able to fine tune our information flow in terms of, if the person has taken an application, what do we do? If the person hasn't yet taken an application, what do we do? If the person is still thinking, what do we do? If the person has been in the system for 2 weeks but hasn't taken a call as yet, what do we do, kind of a thing. Now, the big advantage that we found in the CRM system was that we could trigger all of these. Somebody in the system for 10 days, do this. Somebody in the system for 21 days, do this. Somebody in the system for 30 days, kind of do this. But to your point about what we can do and how we can do, I think it's best to go back to your old customers who typically have been with you for about a year or two, the parents, and they will be able to provide a lot of insights, in that sense of the word. Yeah. Yeah.
How many of you have a chatbot on your website, on your Facebook page? Okay, rather a lesser number. A lot of people don't really have that. Okay, how many of you have a very active Facebook, Insta, Quora, and a YouTube page? 4 5. All right. See, the reason that I asked the question is that because what Professor Shankar mentioned, that the students are already informed when they are engaging with them. So if they're already engaged, already very informed, so obviously they are getting some information from somewhere. So if you are not telling the students or your audiences your own story, they're picking some stories or maybe the false stories made by somebody else. So it's better to have your own story, communicate to them very aggressively. And when I say aggressively, I don't really mean that send them lakhs of SMSs or emails. Essentially have some interfaces which could tell that story to you. Otherwise, somebody else is going to make some story and tell, right? So I think that is one of the areas where a lot of institutions really lag, and I feel that this has become a basic now, which also you indicated. So thank you so much for that input, sir. Another question, maybe without you and Ritesh, you may answer. What Nidhi sir also mentioned, and Professor Shankar also mentioned, is very important, right? It's about overdoing communication, right? One is you have to deal with students who are already informed, right? So you need to go back to them, you need to retarget, remarket, and you don't know that, what is that thing or communication going to kick for them. And but if you do that, that also carries the risk of liquidation of your brand equity. Okay, I'm receiving hundreds of institutions from this institution, right? Hundred of messages from this institution. How to balance this risk while you are still able to engage in a meaningful manner with your audiences and the students? Maybe Hitesh sir, if you.
Uh, I personally believe with the marketing mix which I follow is 35-65, 35 offline and 65 is the online. When we consider that 65 which is online, the communication plays a really very vital role, very vital. Most of the time, an institution, I have seen that, right? Earlier ages, I also used to do that. We don't communicate brand, we market. We should communicate what is the brand that comes with the value. Second mistake which institutions do is they don't follow the pull strategy. It's always a push strategy. Kharid lo, kharid lo, kharid lo. No. Gone are the days. Every customer, every client, every prospect is looking forward for a value. That value will come in when you have a business recall left in the customer's mind. That is something which is an year-long activity. That 65% builds you or maybe breaks you, but 35% ultimately has to come into 65. So that 65 comes to 100 virtually. So that is really very important. Now, when I am communicating to you, what is the timeline? At what time we am sending it to you? 10 p.m.? Sorry, boss, you have lost your brand. Right? 9 a.m., you have lost your brand. So, like when we talk about Merito, right? There is a trends dashboard which I can see right? How many users are active and what they have followed at, right? Communicate accordingly at that. And then communicate your brand in this. Don't talk about placements, for example, talk about career progressions. Don't talk about industry map, talk about career map. And it has to be personalized. That possibility is completely there. It has to be personalized. When I talk about how personalized we have done our CRM is that my counselor has to pick a call, right? Pick a call, talk to the prospect, cut the call, put the follow-up. Now he has to do nothing. Everything is communicated by my CRM on a particular day, on a particular time. But that's a tedious task which we have spent 1.5 to 2 months setting up each and every communication. So now my counselor, it was there sending communication, रात को 8 बजे भेजना है, WhatsApp भेजना है, and all those things, free of that. Focus on productivity. And then you have a freedom to trigger when you want to send that. What value you are proposing to your prospect and how many times, right? Ideally, it has to be a gap of 7 to 10 days before you send any particular email. And it has to be somewhere between 12 to 4 p.m. Now, if your target segment is UG, in the classroom. So he or she will get more emails coming into your inbox. You will lose it, right? So ideal time is when he or she is traveling in a bus. What is the ideal time? after 5. That's it.
Great. Vibhav, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think, like Sir has said, we do a 70-30. 70 is more traditional, 30 is more through digital. This 30% actually happens throughout the year. And the 70% happens during a specific period because we are still an affiliated institution. There is a specific time where the admissions are open, where the admissions are closed. So during this 30% of marketing, what we usually do is we segregate that marketing. See, you are not just trying to target just the student. We are also trying to target their parent also. And taking into consideration, like Sir has already told, pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID, people were not really comfortable with using technology. Now they're forced to a certain extent, but there is still a little stigma. There's still a little area of disinterest that people don't want to use technology of a little older generation, I would say. So for them since you're bombarding with a lot of data to the students, what they usually do is they find a pattern. They take data from various places, for example, say Facebook, Instagram. They take Google reviews into consideration. They take your website into consideration. They see how your chatbot is, interacting with the student. So they try and make a pattern without visiting the college or the university. They feel, yes, there is something here. But when it comes to the parent mindset, they don't find a pattern like this. So when you do digital marketing to these particular age groups, what we usually do is we do our, for example, say Google ads. We target a specific age during during a particular time to a particular time. That too, it has to be not more than 5 or 6 seconds. So, for example, for a parent, the primary concern is their placement or the career of the student. So you just have a 5 or 10-second ad, not more than that. Because, or for a parent, actually, I'm so sorry, I've said it the other way around. For a student, it's not more than 5 or 10 seconds. But for a parent, you can extend it up to 2 to 3 minutes because they have the patience to sit and see the ad or whatever it is. So, like I said, so it's a tradition and a digital mix. We are not into that community where everything can be digital. A personal touch is always better, and from our end, we always say, please visit the institute, because a personal touch, when you see personally, you feel it, and you see how many people these days read books like a normal book on or a Kindle. So that is the major difference that I'm telling you. So youngsters are all Kindles, and a little older generation, they prefer books. So we target in both multiple ways.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll ask 2 quick questions, and maybe Professor Shankar or Nijay sir, you may help us understand that. Now, we were mentioned about there are people who would prefer not using technology, and he talked about that there is a certain age group, and there could be any age group, I feel. What do you think that people fear the most about using technology, and when it is about a B2B or a business subscribing to some technology vendor, what should be the parameters based on which they should shortlist? The must to look at the parameters, right? So 2 parts, both of you may please.
Well, I can say this from experience, because EdTech is such a vibrant space, in schools, especially, like every day we hear of at least 3 to 4 new launches of products and services. So one is, if I'm taking a decision in terms of what software to buy, what technology to bring into the organization, number one that I see it is, will this survive over the next 2 to 3 years? Because let me give you, anecdotally out here. When schools were transitioning into an ERP system, from traditional modes, like a school ERP system, it meant we had to train the teachers, we had to train the system, we had to train the admins, we had to train accounts, we had to train students, we had to train parents, we had to train management, everybody, right? Now, when you bring in something like that, and after a year and a half, the ERP folds up or whatever happens or gets acquired by somebody else, then, to repeat that whole thing is just immense number of man hours which are wasted. That's the first one. Second is, at least at the school level, K-12 level, we want stuff which is user friendly, very, very, very user friendly. Like it should be painfully simple to use. That's what we look at. The third thing, of course, cost effectiveness is naturally critical to us. Fourth, which kind of is an understood thing, is that it should do what it promises to do. You know, a lot of softwares actually don't deliver on the promise. That's sort of most important. For us, these are of course critical. At this point of time now, data privacy or the IDPR requirements, those are important because parents are very, very sensitive to data leaking out of the system, because we've seen this happening where, you know, some unscrupulous companies have taken data and suddenly parents start receiving marketing calls of various trying to sell them, you know, some products and services. So these, in my view, I think these are truly critical.
Okay, now Professor Shankar, the points that Sir just mentioned, unfortunately, you know, you ought to experience a product to understand whether the product is able to meet its promises or not. But what are the evaluation parameters as per you, you know, which everyone should really take care of, or how should one go about shortlisting a tech product, a tech company?
Okay.
Anything like to share? Yeah.
Yes. So let me answer this question from two perspectives. One from the user perspective, second from the university perspective. So as a user, anything I want to, especially as mentioned, like the parents are not that comfortable with technology. They are more comfortable with personal experience. So we have to look at a product which is very easy to use, easy user interface. At the same time, it can give you that personal experience. So for example, if whatever system you have in place helps the parent to connect with a faculty, or helps the parent to connect with a student who is already studying, so they would be more interested to explore, because they'll have a lot of questions like how will the labs are, how much hand holding will be done, so what are the challenges students who are currently studying. So from the parents perspective, that's what they look at, the ease of use and whether the platform is giving me access to the faculty and students. So from the university perspective, if you look at it, what is the scalability? Will I be able to integrate third party uh, uh, APIs or whatever might be into the system, and what is the cost, and data security. At the same time, the reports. So how best, or the ease with which I can generate the reports. So from the university perspective, these are the things we actually look at when shortlisting any CRM or uh, this IT product.
Okay. Fantastic. My answer to the question would be, if it is about enrollment CRM, then Merito. For the rest of the companies, check the credibility of the company, how many similar use cases. For Merito also, check how many use cases, similar use cases that product is solving, because it is a tough call. I myself did not know, but we are, I think, utilizing around 35 to 40 softwares in our own company, which are bought softwares, right? Some software for counting, some software for API, some software like Zapier and Postman. There are a lot of softwares we ourselves use. And then I asked my tech lead that, you know, how do you actually ensure that this is going to be the right software for us? So he also talks about a lot of similar stuff like, you know, the robustness of the platform to ensure that the data is protected, because all the data is our customers' data. It is not our data, right? And then, you know, how many similar use cases that particular product is solving for some similar companies that are in the space. Otherwise, you know, we need to experience it firsthand, right? My last question about, the reports that you mentioned. So a rapid fire, maybe we can start from you, sir. What is, and it's a one common question for all of you, what is that one metric or one report that you always see before you go to the bed?
Okay. During admissions time, it's number of registrations we got and the number of admissions we got. That sort of drives everything for the next week.
Bottom of the funnel. What about you, Professor Shankar?
I'll just look at the conversion as well as the diversity.
Conversions and
Diversity.
diversity, all right. What about you, Vibhav?
My concentration would be more on the ranking of the students in a common entrance test. The good ranks. Have I got the good ranks into my institution? I think that's the biggest parameter that I would look at.
The quality of students enrolling. Hitesh.
Campaign performance in terms of conversion campaign wise.
Okay, fantastic. So that was my time with all of you, and thank you so much for being with me patiently on this discussion. Thank you so much, all the audiences. Give a huge round of applause for the panel here. I hope you were able to get some insights.